few years ago, Comixology had a special, some completely insane deal, like 50 indie comic books for $1. Now, I absolutely adore indie comics, so for me, it was a complete no-brainer to pick up. I mean, at that price point, everyone should have picked it up. I started flipping through the books, and there were some decent ones, some that were okay, and some that I thought were pretty good. And about 3/4 of the way through my new indie collection, I got to a comic that was called Punk Rock in Trailer Parks. I thought, well, that's a weird name for a comic book. I really dug the artwork on the cover, and when I opened it up, I was pleased to see that this wasn't a 24-page solo issue, but a very large graphic novel. The author was Derf Backderf. I had never heard of him and thought, well, maybe he's new to the comic community. So I sat down. I started reading. I went through page after page after page, until I got right to the end. I was stunned. How the hell had I never heard of Derf Backderf? What I didn't know then was that this very book was going to open me up to a whole new world. Punk Rock in Trailer Parks follows Otto Piscock, a high school band dork who has given himself his own nickname, the Baron. He's a super horny kid, but I mean, who isn't in high school, who's also pretty eccentric. He's a weirdo. He's strange. He sees things how he sees them and doesn't care what others think of him. I mean, he records his farts for a senior project and thinks it's the most hilarious thing in the world, because pretty much it is. Above all, he's a true original in a class of, well, mostly boring kids. The book takes place in the early 1980s Ohio. After being introduced to the Baron and some of his life in high school, including classes, friends, and football games, the Baron and his cohorts travel to the bank to see a Klaus Nomi show. Klaus Nomi was known then for his weird makeup, costumes, hair, and bizarre performances. The bank was located in Akron, and it was a real club inside an old bank building that had closed down a few years prior. It reopened as a music venue that hosted acts for a few years from Devo to Chrissie Hynde, making the location a popular place for bands to play in the 1970s. The Baron lives in a trailer park with his uncle. We learned a lot about him just from looking around his room. Russ Meyer, Metropolis, heavy metal, Pam Grier. This is the type of entertainment that the Baron sits around and enjoys. Well, that and peeping on his cheerleader fantasy girl with the big breasts, who was just a quick walk through the woods away. Now, the Baron had been a scrawny kid, but even with a growth spurt and some muscle, he still picked on at school. The thing is, it just doesn't faze him. But later, when he and his friends return to see another show at the bank, and his friends get attacked by some assholes, the Baron backs him up. You can fuck with the Baron, but you fuck with his friends, and you were getting a beatdown. That is a friend that is loyal. After the beatdown, the Baron becomes a legend overnight. He's hired by the bank to bounce, a job he takes very seriously. He gets to meet and hang with some amazing people like The Clash, The Ramones, and even legendary rock journalist Lester Bangs. We see his highs, like when the Baron fronts a band, and we see his lows when tragedy truly tears down this amazing young man. The thing I really like about the Baron is that he's unapologetic. He is who he is. It doesn't care about what anyone else thinks of him. He's the kind of kid you root for, no matter how strange he may be. I love this book. I loved it so much. I went back to Comixology right after finishing Punk Rock to see if Derf had released anything else that I could read right away. I found one other book, and that book was called My Friend Dahmer.
All I know is that I wanted to see what the insides of these animals looked like. There may have been some violence involved, some underlying subconscious feelings of violence. In 9th grade, in biology class, we had the usual dissection of fetal pigs, and I took the remains of that home and kept the skeleton of it, and I just started branching out. Dogs, cats. I was 18 years old, driving home. I saw this hitchhiker about a mile from my house, and he caught my eye. I drove past him, thought to myself, should I stop and pick him up, or should I just keep on going? I wish I just kept on going, but I didn't. I turned around, picked him up, and that's when the nightmare became a reality.
John Backderf, also known as Derf, is a comic creator hailing from Ohio. He worked as a political cartoonist and staff cartoonist for various newspapers over the years. Derf became well known for his comic strip The City, which appeared in over 140 different newspapers before he chose to discontinue the strip to focus more on graphic novels. Derf has won over 50 awards, to include his newest 2016 Eisner Award for his graphic novel Trashed. Derf grew up in Richfield, where he attended Revere High School. One of his classmates was Jeffrey Dahmer, who was convicted of being a serial killer who raped, murdered, and dismembered 17 boys and men. Derf didn't just pass Dahmer in the hallways. Derf and his friends were amused by Dahmer's weird behavior, which was off-putting to most. Now, most people know Dahmer as the man who committed some awful, terrible, horrendous crimes. Derf knew him as a messed up kid who was alienated by most. His antics were humorous until they weren't. Derf created a story titled Young Jeffrey Dahmer, which appeared in Fantagraphics 00 issue 18, published in 1997. Derf would then start work on a Dahmer graphic novel, but, unable to find a publisher, would create more stories for his self-published My Friend Dahmer one-shot that he released in 2002. The issue would become a cult hit and would earn Derf an Eisner Award nomination. Now, the issue feels a bit episodic, and Derf himself looks back at the one-shot as a missed opportunity. When he finally came back to work on the version of My Friend Dahmer that was ultimately released, he returned having conducted interviews, researched more into Dahmer's background and crimes, while pushing his writing and artwork to all new limits. The My Friend Dahmer graphic novel was released in 2012 and was immediately hailed as a masterpiece. Time magazine called it one of the top 5 nonfiction books of 2012. The book was nominated for an Ignatz, Harvey, and Reuben Awards, and received an Angoulême Award for Best Debut Graphic Novel. The book was hailed everywhere as one of the best of the year. So where was I? I guess I should have been attending more SPX cons to find out exactly what I was missing. When I bought My Friend Dahmer that day in 2015, right after reading Punk Rock and Trailer Parks, I don't even think I read the blurb on Comixology. I just bought it, downloaded it, and read it. So how do you start a tale about a future serial killer? With a cat. A dead cat. A dead cat that you take up to a shed to be dissolved in acid like the other creatures that he has in bottles. And when the kids who make fun of you mock you some more, you do what you have to do and you take the insults. The book has a narrator, and that narrator is Derf himself, who was one of the characters in the story. The first time I saw this page, where Dahmer is shoved down and called dumber, it really hurt, because it made me think back to my own school days, where some classmates called this one kid because he was uncoordinated. I never made fun of him myself, but I never stepped in, and now I really wish that I had. Anyway, Dahmer is portrayed as just a quiet kid who really doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't have any friends. He has a mom, dad, brother, so it just seems like your average American family. And yep, this screaming here reminds me of my childhood too. Derf lets us know that in all the years of junior high school, Dahmer barely made a ripple. I had normal friendships in high school, said Dahmer, quoted in the book, and really never had any close relationships after high school, he said. Once at Revere High School, Dahmer turned from that quiet kid in junior high school to a guy who was slurring his speech, having spastic tics, and fits. Not because there was anything wrong with him, he just did it to do it. Derf and his friends were quite amused by Dahmer. Dahmer, in turn, would kind of hang out with Derf and his band geek friends. They would hold Dahmer fan club meetings, and Derf would draw Dahmer cartoons. Derf notes that Dahmer said much later of these years, "With my friends at school, we had a good time, a good social life." The way he acted obviously got at least some people to be friendly with him, like Derf. But when you are 15 and thinking about killing men and then having sex with their corpses, maybe the only way to cope is to do something to get your mind off it, like acting the way Dahmer acted. That's it. That's the book. That's My Friend Dahmer at its core. It is an intimate look at a weird kid who did weird things. He drank to dull the pain. He acted spastic. He didn't care. Because if he wasn't doing these things, he would probably be doing something worse. And once he left high school, well, it truly was all downhill from there. Derf isn't here to give you reasons why Dahmer was a murderer. Derf is just able to fill in details that actually make Dahmer look more normal. Well, at least possibly sympathetic. And, more sympathetic and normal than he would as a serial killer. Or at least talk about the events of his youth that may have influenced him in becoming the man he would become. My Friend Dahmer can truly be considered Derf's seminal work. From front to back, it keeps you glued to the page. And even after the actual comic is over, Derf shares deleted scenes from the comic, his first story from 00, sources and notes he used in his research, original artwork from the first attempt at making that first Dahmer graphic novel, notes he took throughout the entire process, pictures from his yearbook, and more. Just like the graphic novel, the research portion of this book is just as interesting, possibly even more so. My Friend Dahmer is hailed as a masterpiece, but I also believe that time will show that this book, just like A Contract with God, Mouse, or Bone, will live on in history as one of the best and brightest works in the comic book medium. Derf's art style has been compared to Robert Crumb, which is an apt and flattering comparison, though I'd like to think there may be some Peter Baggett and David Boswell in his work as well. With My Friend Dahmer, Derf has joined the likes of Terry Moore, Alex Robinson, Jeff Smith, and Craig Thompson, creators I hold dear to my heart, whose works will always stand the test of time. That is how amazing My Friend Dahmer is. After Derf graduated high school in 1978, he started attending art school, and that following summer, he worked as a garbage man back in his hometown, a job he worked between 1979 and 1980. Derf would take the experiences he had from that job and created a comic called Trashed, a memoir published in 2002 from Slave Labor Graphics. The one-shot doesn't have much of a driving narrative. It is basically 3 long stories compacted into this comic. Actually, I'm going to take that back. This absolutely has a narrative, and I guess the narrative is being a garbage man can suck. It can really, really suck. The shit you need to pick up, the crap that gets all over you, the angry and irritated people who get pissed off at you when you are just trying to do your job. Oh, and on top of that, it is one of the most dangerous careers. I'm not joking. Not counting active army soldiers, collecting refuse is always in the top 10 most dangerous jobs, and usually in the top 5 to boot. I say memoir, but the book is a work of fiction, though nearly everything that happens in the book comes from fact. Derf would go back to Trashed in 2010 and 2011 when he did 2 installments as a webcomic, but just like My Friend Dahmer, revisiting the work led to a deeper, more full story when the Trashed graphic novel was released in 2015. The cover tells us that Trashed is an ode to the crap job of all crap jobs, and after reading this, I really do believe it. Trashed follows garbage men JB and Mike, 2 guys who always seem to get the crappiest jobs at work. And while they are out picking up your garbage each and every day, we, the reader, get to learn about garbage. For instance, did you know that our country produces 254 million tons of waste each year? That is 508 billion pounds. 1 year. Where does it go? I don't know. Don't the garbage men just come and make it magically vanish? How about a child that goes through approximately 8,000 diapers before being potty trained? That turns into 18 billion diapers full of crap going to our landfills each year. When Derf says this is a crap job, he means it figuratively and literally. So what happens to JB and Mike on their average day? Well, some asshole will come out and videotape them just doing their job. They're tossing away the carcasses of dead animals. Oh, you see a girl that you like? But she's gonna blow you off because you smell like piping hot garbage. Why not attack some local children with garbage? Why don't you ignore the assholes who had all day to put out their garbage but wait till the very last second? Raining? Sure, no problem. Just collect the waterlogged garbage. Snowing? Go get that garbage and hope that the 50,000-pound vehicle doesn't get you killed. Then just go to the dump and depress yourself as you pile more crap onto more crap for miles and miles on end. That's just your average day for JB and Mike. 2 guys who know there are better things in life than working and trash collecting. Well, thank God Derf makes them so very, very fun to read about. Derf even adds facts in about garbage collecting throughout the story, from the history of garbage trucks to how garbage collecting has advanced from early times to modern times. The book is much lighter in tone than Dahmer, but still makes for an incredibly great read. Trash was not only critically acclaimed, but landed Derf an Eisner Award to boot. So where does Derf go from here?
Jeff's a little off, you know? I think he's kind of hilarious.
Oh my god.
I like bones. It interests me. What's inside?
I see things in you that I don't like about myself. I want you to have friends in ways that I never could.
I'm just like anybody else. He's not a sideshow attraction. Are you okay?
Get out of your shell. You need to be more normal.
The film adaptation of My Friend Dahmer hits theaters November 2017, written and directed by Mark Myers. The film had its debut just a couple months ago at the Tribeca Film Festival, where I almost got to see it. Thanks for trying for me, Sarah. Now, critics have been mostly positive, with reviews saying My Friend Dahmer feels very authentic to its time and its protagonist, who is destined to become the worst kind of antagonist. I'm still not quite sure how they made it work, but they did, and it's fun, sinister, and remarkably thoughtful. It truly makes me hopeful that My Friend Dahmer will be the one comic book film of 2017 that is an absolute must-see.
I now present to you Jeffrey Dahmer in his command performance.
Derf also revealed right after Tribeca that Trash is also in the works to become a feature film, directed by Bradley Kaplan and produced by Golden Globe nominated and Emmy Award-winning actor John Leguizamo. I have no clue what project Derf will be cooking up next for his fans, but until it's released, we can always go back with an old friend. The Baron of Prospect Avenue is a sequel to punk rock and trailer parks, with Otto now living in Cleveland, working for a bookstore, living in an old abandoned dentist office, still getting to hang out with Lester Bangs and the Ramones, but no longer the lone quirky character, as Cleveland seems to have its own fair share of amazing, eccentric characters for the Baron to enjoy. And the best part? As the Baron of Prospect Avenue is a webcomic, you can continue to read these adventures of the Baron for absolutely free. I really hope you enjoyed this look at the works of Derf Backderf. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe, as there are more videos of amazing comic creators soon on the way. This is Irish Rican for Two Guys, One Review, and we'll catch you next comic.